And you talk about Jesus hanging out with, the stories I grew up hearing definitely are Jesus was a friend to the poor. You talk about Jesus hanging out with some rich and powerful people, actually. Jesus being, at all the cool parties, is what you're saying.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, we talk about uh, Jesus as having um, a mission to the rich, and normally you hear this idea that yeah, Jesus had a mission to the poor, and he came to save kind of poor sinners or something like
Mhm.
that. And we think that uh, kind of a mission to the poor wouldn't go far enough. It wouldn't actually bring about the kind of change that was needed. I kind of see that as a sort of a liberal idea um, of grounded in perhaps helping the less fortunate or something like this.
Yeah.
But the mission to the rich was very much about their kind of their organizing, their early organizing, and um, part of our argument for this, it's quite an interesting one. Uh, it's to do with the translation of the word sinners. So we all know the sayings about Jesus came to save sinners.
Hmm.
In fact, it's came to call sinners to repentance so that they may be saved, and so on. And that word sinners within the Jewish tradition, we looked over about 1,000 years worth of um, uh, Jewish texts, and the dominant translation that you often hear or interpretation that sinners were kind of poor societal outcasts, um, uh, downtrodden, and so on, is frankly completely wrong.
Hmm.
Within Jewish texts, it's entirely consistent across all of these texts over almost 1,000 years. Um, it referred to people who were lawbreakers, breakers of the Mosaic or the Jewish law.
Hmm.
It could also be applied to non-Jews because they didn't follow the law, hence they were sinners. But whenever the socioeconomic status of a sinner is mentioned within any of these texts, it is always consistently with reference to rich, exploitative people who are unjustly oppressing the poor. So when the Gospels talk about Jesus as coming to call the sinners to repentance, what we think it means is that uh, he was coming to um, uh, call the exploitative rich sinners
Hmm.
to give up uh, give up their wealth, preferably to the movement. And they were able to connect with some of these wealthy individuals in Galilee and Judea through the likes of tax collectors who would have had some of these networks. So we know that
Hmm.
at least one of Jesus's disciples was a tax collector. And of course, there's the famous saying about Jesus dining with tax collectors and sinners, and it being scandalous. People finding this very scandalous, and it's scandalous precisely because he's of this movement of and for the poor, and yet he's having these dinners with the exploitative rich. But of course, he's doing that in order to get them to give up their wealth or face kind of terrible consequences at this coming judgment at the end time.